recording, and we're going to start our webinar. So
we have to be,
yeah,
be careful of what we say.
Yeah, that's right. Well, we got a lot of hello everyone that are joining. Nice to see you all, and at least coming from 18 inches of snowy weather here in Boston. Welcome everybody, and if you want to chime in with where you are, it's always fun to see where people are checking in from, so you can put that into the chat. We always like seeing where all our friends and guests here are checking in from in our virtual, in yet another virtual day in the life of pandemic 2020. And we'll let people get into the room. We had quite a number of people register for the event. It was our largest registration yet. It was close to 350 people. So we'll wait for everybody to kind of gather, and then we'll go. Hey, we got somebody from Houston.
What up, Houston?
That's where Scott is.
And also from the UK.
Woo!
Welcome, David.
Little Compton. Hi, Melinda.
Another Fairview, Texas. That's awesome.
Where's Fairview?
Texas?
No, it's in Texas.
Nice. North of Dallas. Thank you. Okay.
There we go.
People from Texas.
Yeah.
You know what else would be cool while people are just kind of chiming in, we're waiting to get going? If you put down maybe what kind of gear you're shooting with, like that Capture One would, that you're going to be using Capture One to process your images with, that might be helpful. So like, you know, you don't have to be that specific, but just say, you know, I'm using
Leica. iPhone 11. I don't know if that works.
Yes, it does.
With Capture One?
It does now.
That's awesome. And we know that Leica just announced a partnership with Capture One. And for those of you that are joining, Scott will be doing another discussion with Leica on January 7th, and using your Leica cameras with Capture One. So stay tuned for that announcement coming from both Leica and Digital Silver Imaging. So just, I guess, just a quick little housekeeping thing for everybody. We do record these webinars, and we will be posting them to our YouTube channel, usually within 24 to 48 hours of our event. You will all receive a link to it. And you're welcome to visit our YouTube channel to see anything else that we've got going on or coming up or recording.
Wow, 36 inches in Vermont and still snowing. Yeah. Yep.
Ed. Hello, Ed.
Get your skis out. 'Tis the season.
And just so you all know, if you're looking at the panelists here, there's only one Eric Luden.
Oh, let me change that. It changed.
I believe me, there was only one of me.
Yes.
Thank you very much. My business partner down there, Andrea Zaki, will, we don't know why it comes in as Eric Luden, but you know, so be it.
Oh.
Shooting, film, and scanning, Sabine says. That's great.
Yes.
Capture One is a great solution for that. You'll learn today a little bit. Scott's going to talk about that. So yeah, we're just at 1 o'clock. So we'll give it a few more minutes. It's fun seeing where people are chiming in from, the gear you're using. All of that is helpful and fun. So again, any new people that have joined in, if you want to, the question that Andrea put out to the group was, you know, let us know where you are in our virtual world here. That's always fun. And also maybe what gear you're using that you're hoping to integrate with Capture One. Obviously, there are different cameras, and Scott will cover that.
Yeah, so just kind of to bring everybody up to speed here, we'll be starting the webinar soon, and welcome. And I just wanted to cover a few housekeeping issues as well. So as Eric mentioned, we will record this webinar, and it will appear on our YouTube channel. Another item that you're going to want to look for is we're going to be doing a print raffle, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And the other thing is you'll probably have a lot of questions about Capture One, and Scott's the guy to ask. So what we ask you do is if you go to the bottom of your Zoom screen, there's a little icon Q&A, and you can enter your questions into the Q&A as opposed to entering them into the chat. Now, if there are questions in the chat, I'll try to get to those too and present them to Scott, but it would be a lot easier if you just put them in the Q&A. So that's what I have.
Oh, Andy Caulfield, thanks for that comment. We worked on some of Andy's film recently that Scott digitized for Andy Caulfield here, and really glad that those digital scans from our new system here worked out so well. So thank you, Andy, and Scott, great job. So thanks a lot. Hey, Luis Navarro. Yeah, it was a bummer that we had no Palm Springs photo this year. That was a big disappointment. All of the things where we would normally be able to gather and high five and hug and share a beer or whatever, it was this was not a year for that. The only silver lining is how many people we do get to see or virtually see and connect with from all over. So my feeling is going forward, we're going to have a, kind of a combination of more virtual, but looking forward to physical and face-to-face gatherings. So I think that's really important. So anyway, so we're a little after 3 o'clock, and I'm 1 o'clock, sorry, here in Boston. 12 o'clock where our friend Scott is over there in outside of Houston, and 11 o'clock where Andrea is in Denver. So we represent 3 time zones here, and there are many other online. So really great to have all of you. Welcome you to our webinar, and Andrea is going to make a couple of introductions and comments.
Yeah, first I want to say, hey, hi, Tom. So yeah, as you know, this is our Capture One, preparing your files for print webinar. And I'd like to introduce everybody here. So I'm Andrea Zaki, and I'm a partner, Digital Silver Imaging. And in center screen there, I think, is Eric Luden, who is the owner of Digital Silver Imaging and the founder. And then we have Digital Silver Imaging's newest member, newest team member, Scott. And Scott Nidermaier was with Phase for, how long were you with Phase One?
6 years.
6 years. And Scott was in charge of their EDU division, and he also did a lot of webinars. And anything else you want to add to that, Scott?
I did a lot of workshops. I ran the POTUS workshops. So traveling the globe, traveling the globe. I have to find my English language today. Doing the workshops, any events, trade shows and events and stuff like that. I work closely with the marketing team, and so I was a diverse person. But my key was starting in tech support and then developing the Edgy program for Phase One.
So we brought Scott on because we have a new digitization initiative. And I think that this might be a good point to just turn that over to Eric. We're going to give you just a brief overview of that before we jump into the webinar. So now that we have you at the beginning, I want to talk about that briefly. But also, Eric, before I turn it over to you, I want to say one more thing, which is about the print raffle. So kind of as a little bonus of our webinar here today, we're going to be raffling off a 16 by 20, either one of our true real silver gelatin DSI digital silver prints, or you can have a beautiful museum quality inkjet print on either fine art Hahnemühle or Canson paper. And we're going to run that raffle at the very end of the webinar right after the Q&As. So we're going to hold you hostage here for that section. But I think that the webinar is not going to go really long because we want to leave time for your questions. So at that point, now I think I'm ready to turn it over to you, Eric.
Great. So yeah, so as Andrea mentioned, one of the things that Scott is joining us for is initiative working with our sort of new digitization system and program. And so behind me, what you're looking at is the DT Atom system using a phase 1 150 megapixel camera mounted to a very sturdy copy kind of stand system, photon lights. The advantage of our system now is that instead of using scanners, which take a long time, have to be oil mounted if you're doing drum scanning, but it is much faster. You know, we're literally taking exposures in 60th and a 1/25th of a second, as opposed to minutes for each individual negative. So you're getting a very high resolution file comparable to what you are getting with drum scans, but at a much faster turnaround time. So the advantage is you're getting more affordable scans, faster turnaround time, and unbelievably great resolution. And at the core of the hardware is really what Capture One brings to this, is the unbelievably powerful editing and inversion of negatives, which isn't something you can do in Lightroom or Photoshop. That the inversion tool for negatives with this system and this software is one of the most powerful things I've witnessed. And we've already started working on some unbelievably great archives, and very excited that we'll be working with Elliot Irwit's archive coming in the first of the year. So, and that's where Scott's going to be heading in January. But what the primary reason for Scott joining us is that we're literally going to be taking this this on the road and bringing it to where you are. So we've bought a van. We're going to outfit a van with a second system, and we'll be able to bring that to you. So Scott did a very wonderful demonstration video on the system a few weeks ago, which is on our YouTube channel. So we will include that link when we email you out the link to this. So without any more of that, I'm going to turn it over to our Scott, based in Houston, Texas, and looking forward to what you're going to present today, Scott, and kind of our new and growing relationship with Capture One. So thank you.
Hi, everybody. Can everybody hear me all right? Make sure I turn my mic on. You know, I keep muting it. I want to make sure I was unmuted. Thank you very much. Super stoked to be with you all here. Yes, I am in Houston, Texas. It is absolutely freezing here. It was like 50 degrees yesterday. I had to put a sweater on. So for my Texas people, you know what I'm talking about. Winters in Texas, they're great. Super happy to be here. So today we're going to cover briefly Capture One and optimizing your image for print, because, you know, like all of the great points of photography, if you look at the early history of photography, you know, and I've been doing research on Stieglitz and some of the early gallery guys and people who really drove photography as an art. Just getting a snap, right? Just getting a snap on your phone or your digital camera or something like that, that's great if you post it to social media, but does it really live? Right. And I'm a big believer. This is why, you know, I've always loved the guys at DSI. I'm a big believer in that a photograph, an image isn't finished until it's printed, until it becomes something that, you know, that you live with, that you hang on your wall, that you want other people to live with. Then it really takes, you know, it takes roots and it becomes something tangible. And that's the so important that I think we've lost that in the history of digital photography, you know, with this revolution that has really overtaken us in the last 10, 15 years, is that now all of a sudden they put it on a hard drive, they put it on social media or on Instagram, and then what? And then where does it go? So, you know, we really want to encourage you to print your files. Like, you know, you take beautiful pictures. I know some of you guys from seeing them in the chat here, and I know the kind of images you guys take, and, you know, make prints. So there are lots of ways to deal with your file in Photoshop and Lightroom. I particularly love Capture One. At its core, it's a raw processing engine. At its very beginning, the roots of Capture One, it was about taking your raw data from that digital file and getting the best possible image. And some people think, well, is it replacing Photoshop? No, it's not here to replace Photoshop. Photoshop is an editing tool. And the biggest differences that I can say is that in Photoshop, in order to work in Photoshop, you've already given that digital file a set of parameters to exist within, right? It's a TIFF or a JPEG or something like that. With Capture One, you're working with the raw files. So you're working with the raw data out of your camera, which gives you a tremendous amount of latitude on how you edit that file in order for it to become, you know, the vision that you have in your head, or the vision that you have when you created that image, when you were there pressing the trigger on the camera. So today is pretty brief. I'm not going to do a real extensive Capture One. to show you some files, and then we're going to talk about process recipes, creating a process recipe, and getting that file ready in order to go to print, either at your home printer with the machine that you have in house, or of course, feel free to send us files. We love it when you print with us. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here, if that's all right with anyone. As you guys have questions, go ahead and type them in that Q&A, and Andrea will feed them to me as we're going. So I'm gonna share this one. Make sure I get the right one. Boom, there it is. Can you see my screen? So just to start off with, straight at the beginning, I'm gonna move my little camera window over here to my other screen. Just to start off with, this image that you're seeing here is a 6x7 negative that was digitized using our scanning solution, using that phase 1 151 megapixel system. If anybody who hasn't seen the other video or the other webinar, please go look at it. It's really cool to see how we can take film in a completely clean and safe environment and get it digitized to create a digital archive, because your film has value. Your film still has value. And so this is the image I'm starting with, so I can show a little bit of the editing process going from a negative to a positive, and then working with it in Capture One. And then at the very end, Eric actually has a print there in Boston that he's going to show everyone that we created from this file that we digitized. So to begin with, once we get this scanned and we go into our software, we're actually going to take and create a positive from it. And if you see, I mean, at its base, for those of you guys who are working from home on Capture One, if I look in my levels tool on the left-hand side over here, can you see the levels tool on the left-hand side? All I'm doing realistically is I'm going to go ahead and reverse those levels to go from a negative to a positive. Now it's very washed out and it requires editing and software. The version of Capture One that we use with our scanning station is Cultural Heritage. It's specifically designed to do this. So it's a little bit more powerful and has some other tools in there in order to do that. But you can do it from home. It just requires a little more effort in the post-processing. And once we reverse those levels and we get it into Capture One, we go ahead and we put a crop on it, right? So we go ahead and crop in and around that image. And then we have the freedom to start editing and manipulating that image to come in and adjust our exposure and tweak it out. If I go to this image here, I'm going to go ahead and go clone variant, and then I'm going to take it back to its root. Take it back to a 0 point so you guys can see, and I'll cover that clone variant thing here in a little bit. Once I get that, I can come in here and start to adjust my exposure, my contrast, all of the tools that I have within Capture One in order to really take this image and get it ready for print. And, you know, with all of these tools in Capture One, for those of you guys who are using Capture One, you're already going to know, you know, what I'm talking about and what we're doing here. If you're new to Capture One, if you've never used the software before, it is a bear. It is a very powerful software, and there are tons of tools and tons of capabilities, but you need to not be afraid of that. There are loads of videos online. David Grover, the man behind The Man, the Mystery, the Legend, has done several short 7-minute, 5-minute videos on each of the individual tools. And this is something that you can really dive in and learn on, and you don't need to be afraid of it. It really doesn't take a lot. Of course, it's got to be visual on what it is that we're getting out of this file. And I'm just doing a real quick kind of, let me see here, which one do I have it on? Let's go unconstrained. Real quick kind of an edit to show you that, you know, it doesn't take a whole lot to take your negative and make it a positive, you know, with some tweaking and some editing. And then that we can then, you know, send into the upload to the DSI and make a true digital silver print. All of the files, this image I believe was created by Eric. Is that correct, Eric? Shake your head, yes. That's an Eric file. Everything else that's on my screen here are images that I shot, and I, you know, with the scanning service and stuff like that, of course, we can archive your, you know, your film and digitize your work. But I wanted to use my pictures because I mean these are stuff that I print and that I want to print.
Scott?
Yes.
So I just wanted you to go and back and cover one thing again. Can you again show how you converted that negative to a positive? Because yes. I think that's not very intuitive.
So on my file here, I'm going to go ahead and when you have your negative, in order to take it to a positive, So I'm going to go ahead and just reset this all the way. And in the top left, you see over here the little arrow. You know, if you kind of see my mouse moving, that little arrow with a back button, that's a reset. That's taking it all the way back to the very, very beginning, to a 0 point. I haven't done anything to this file. The easiest way to do it, like I said, the cultural heritage software has tools built into it. For everyone using Capture One Pro or a specific version to your camera, Capture One for Sony, Capture One for Fuji, Capture One for Nikon, and now Capture One for Leica, which is really exciting. Finally, I've been asking for this for years, having full support with Leica. This is huge. For my Leica people out there, I hope you're excited. This is a really big deal. So what you want to do is you go in from your library tool. Of course, I have my folder here, images for the webinar that I pulled into here. And what I want to do is go to my develop module, if you will. And that looks like the little folder there at the top. You can see up here in the top. And we're going to go to our levels. And all you're doing is reversing the levels. So I'm taking my highlights and dragging it to one side and my shadows and dragging it to the other. And I'm just going to go ahead and reverse that image. Now, whenever I'm working with any of my other editing tools in Capture One, from that negative to a positive, you have to keep in mind it's going to be the opposite of what it was previously. So instead of, increasing exposure, it's going to decrease by, you know what I mean? So if I'm pulling that to the right and I take that down, add contrast to the file, bring those highlights in and the shadows. And then it's just a matter of, playing with the image and editing it until you get it to where you want. Now, this image in particular was created from a 6x7 negative. So generally for me, when I crop from a scan or something that was created, I'm going to go ahead and just do unconstrained, meaning that it's not locking into any format. Now, even though this was shot with a 6x7, if I can drag it up there, I hit the hand tool. Even though this was shot with a 6x7, let's just say I wanted to do a 4x5. If I go to my crop tool here at the top and I click on that, and the little arrow, you see it's highlighted orange there at the top. Everybody seeing that? I can drop down to 4x5, and that's already pre-built in. And then you can add your own aspect ratios as well. I'll show you how to do that. So if I go 4x5, now all of a sudden it's going to lock into a 4x5 format, and it keeps within that space. Now, the non-intuitive thing from Capture One is that, we're very used to working in Photoshop and maybe Lightroom where you hit enter to commit. The enter button is that I'm committing to this action that I've just done. And Capture One doesn't work that way. All you have to do is click on a different tool. So for me, I like to be on the hand tool as like my neutral point. And so if I hit H on my keyboard, or the little hand tool that's now highlighted orange up here in the top, right? Now I've seen what my crop has committed to. And if I go back to my crop tool again, and I click on my crop tool or C on my keyboard, I can see where I am. So that's just the kind of easy way to do that. The beauty of the hand tool, I just downloaded Capture One 21, the newest, latest, and greatest version. And it still has the little help menus turned on. I got to go into the preferences and turn those off. The beauty of the hand tool, and one of the things that I love about Capture One, is that if I'm judging color or sharpness, always, you guys, with your files, if you're judging color and sharpness, it's always at 100%. You always judge color and sharpness at 100%. So if I'm in my hand tool, see my little hand tool, and I double click anywhere on my screen, anywhere on that file, I'm zooming in to 100%. It's just a really easy way to do that. And then I can say, all right, how sharp is my file? Is this the image that I want to work with? Did I get it right? Et cetera, et cetera. Are my colors committing? When we're looking at a preview, if I go down to this beautiful image that I created in Banff, Canada on a POTUS workshop, if I'm looking at the preview on my screen, that's a suggestion of the colors. That's a suggestion of the data. It's not a full rendering. So it's not ideal. Realistically, in order to judge color and sharpness, you need to be at 100%. So hopefully that makes sense to everybody. I can't stress that enough. Always judge color and sharpness at 100%. And this file here is a PSD. It's already been, taken into Photoshop and tweaked and edited. But let's go into talking about getting it ready for print. Like, they have all the tools and the edits. Hold on, my train of thought. Let's go back a little bit. Let's go to this bad boy right here. I love this. This is a file created in Morro Bay, California. I was out teaching at Cal Poly Tech. Shout out to my people at Cal Poly. You know, there's so many wonderful schools in this country. So I see Tom Ash was on. What's up, Tom? SVA, worked with you guys. With this one, I was out in California and we wanted to go shooting. A couple of students and I wanted to go shooting. And so we went out to Morro Bay and there was this massive fog rolled in. And I didn't think we'd get any images. I mean, these are 1 minute, 60-second exposure, these incredibly long exposures. The files were super dark. What I'm going to do is I have this one kind of all tweaked out, but let's take it back to its root. And so if I go up here to image, right, and I'm going to go new variant. And by clicking on new variant, I'm going back to the very roots of that file. So before any edits are done. And here's the beauty of Capture One and why it's great to prep your images and use Capture One to get your images ready for print is that I can create multiple variants. And it doesn't take up room on the hard drive. Realistically, Capture One has a .cos file associated with your raw file. All it is a set of instructions. It's like Capture One is sitting there taking notes on what you want done to that file. Oh, I'm going to crop it here. Okay, cool. I'm going to add this color. Okay, I'm going to do this exposure. And all of those settings files don't take up room on your hard drive. So anytime I create a new variant, that's all it is another line item in that list of instructions. Oh, hey, new variant. Boom. You're not actually creating another raw file. You're not taking up any more space. It doesn't become space on your hard drive until you process that file, until you commit to making a TIFF or a JPEG or a PSD or a DNG, whatever your preferred format is. So realistically, I can keep creating variants and tweaking and editing. Now with this one, we can see at its root what it was. And I liked it as black and white. You know, I came in here and I kind of started tweaking with it and I started playing with the colors, you know, and the exposure and the contrast. I was kind of, you know, doing different things with it. And although it's a nice file, where'd my white balance go? There it is. Let's cool it off a little bit. You know, let's make it a little bit cold. It was cold there, you know, and then I'm going to add a little crunch. I'm going to add a little clarity to it, you know, just kind of tweak around and play with the tools. And I'm like, all right, that looks pretty cool. That's beautiful. But, you know, really, I would love to see this as a black and white. Now, I'm a big fan of black and white. I still shoot film. That was the dangerous 4-letter word that I used when I was still working at Phase. And they'd be like, film, the 4-letter word. I love film. I shoot my Hasselblad and my Nikon, and I've got a whole stack of Ilford and Tri-X on my shelf that is just waiting for me to go and create something wonderful. So as much as I love digital because of its instant gratification, I still love film and I love black and white. I love true black and white, which is, you know, when you see a true print from black and white, there's just something about it. So for this, I'm like, you know what? I want to see this as black and white. So there's two ways of doing it. Most people just come up to the saturation slider and they go, boom. Okay, I've desaturated it. But this is an image that was created from a color sensor, from a color file. There was that bare pattern over top of that digital sensor, red, green, green, blue, red, green, green, blue. By just desaturating, by just taking the saturation and going away, I'm throwing away all of the control that I have over that file. So instead of doing that, go ahead and take it back to 0. I'm going to go into my black and white. So if we go to the 3 little circles at the top, all right, which is my color tool, and I go down here, I see the black and white. And I'm going to go ahead and enable black and white. And by enabling black and white, now you see that I have all of these channels, red, green, blue, yellow, cyan, and magenta, right? My color wheel, that I now have the control over that file to tweak any colors or elements within it. And I think the blues are really going to affect and drag that down, right? And I can go in and start to play with that file and really get it looking the way that I want with the vision that I have in my head. You can also, if you see right here, split tones for anybody who's really into alternative process. You know, maybe you want a split tone. I can go into split tones and start to tweak in on that and do something funky. I tend to be a real big fan of cyanotypes, and I do a lot of cyanotype work. And so I'll go in oftentimes and, you know, tweak an image around, or I can easily just take that back to 0 and reset it. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to leave enable black and white on, right? And now I'm going to go back into my develop tool. Now that I'm in black and white, again, I can go back into my color and my contrast, my highlights, my shadows, and my clarity. Now let's just say I get this file right where I want it. I get it to a beautiful place, you know, and I go, you know what, that looks pretty good. That's the image that's ready for print. The next thing that I really stress that you guys do, especially if you're working from a digital file, dust is our enemy, right? Everybody's with me on that. Everybody's like shaking their heads. Yes, dust is our enemy. I want you to look at the file at 100%. So I go back to that hand tool and I zoom in and I start looking around my file And I know there's dust on this image because I was retouching it last night. It's there somewhere. Oh, there's one. Look at that big old dust spot. Oh, I would hate to get a print back from DSI and have that dust spot on there and go, ah, right? Gone are the days of spot toning. For those of you who are still in the know on the film world, they're no longer making spot tone. So if you have it, cherish it. I'm going to go ahead and use, essentially, this would be like the J brush in Photoshop, the heal tool in Capture One. And I click on that little Band-Aid there at the top. If I click the drop-down menu, there's the draw a healing mask, cloning mask, or remove a spot. Now I can use the spot tool. I like the mask in particular because it gives me control if there's like a hair in the file or something like that. So I'm just going to go in and start to draw that in. Over here on the left side, if you see under my layers palette right there, it's created a heal layer. So I can turn that off or on. So it's created a layer within Capture One. It just does it automatically, which is wonderful. Thank you, Capture One. It's great to be able to just click on the tool you want and then start to use it and have it build a layer for you, rather than first creating the layer, naming it, building it out, and then doing your edits. So if I go into that heal layer, I can dance around my image here. You see the hand tool, and I'm dragging around. If I press and hold the space bar on my keyboard, the hand tool pops up, and I can drag around that file, and I can go in and start to clean up that file. And once I've gone through and I've looked at everything, and I'm satisfied that I have taken care of everything, right? Then I'm at my final point. Now I'm ready to send this file. Now I have to think like, okay, where's it going to hang in my house? You know, I'm putting this in the gallery. What size is going to, you know, do I know within my gallery and my space that sells most often for my gallery people out there, right? Little shout out to 291. I've been doing a bunch of research on Stieglitz and having fun. So I've decided that, you know, let's remember 291, the original New York gallery. So what's the size that's going to sell? What's the size that I want to hang in my house? If this is a gift for somebody, what's going to fit within their space? Now, a lot of times people will just process out and then send the file in. I encourage you to think about where I want this file to be. Now, I'm a big fan of, let's just say we're giving away a 16 by 20, right? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go to my crop tool. And you see I've already pre-built a 16 by 20 thing here. But if I hadn't done that and I wanted to do a new aspect ratio, 1319, or an odd size, you know, 1117 or whatever, I can go in here and I can go add aspect ratio. And by adding the aspect ratio, I can then name it DSI print, right? And then give it the size that I want. So I'm going to do a 16 by 20. Okay. And then as soon as I start to go on that file, you see it jumped. Right away, it jumped into space. Now I am in the 16 by 20 format. So I can make it, you know, I can tighten it up. I can really start to get that crop there. I like it nice and tight. I wish I had the golden ratio up on here. Boom. I think that's a little bit more. I think that looks pretty good. That looks like a file that I'm ready to send in and have printed. So again, I'm going to click on the hand tool, H on my keyboard, and it's going to commit to that size. Now I've already designated that file as 16 by 20. When I go to my process recipe, and in the top left over here, everybody see my little hand right there? That's the process tool, right? When I go into the process tool, I have all of these process recipes. I like to call them soup recipes. Coming from the film world, I used to work as a lab tech in Montana. I worked for F11, running their dip and dunk. When I first moved to New York, I worked for Jack Ward Color Service on 26th Street. I ran a Ritz camera, like a 1-hour print lab. So I come from that kind of, you know, print background. So I like to think of my chemical recipes, my soup recipes. And that's what these process recipes are. They are the steps that you're taking with a file in order to send it to print. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a new one, just because I already have all these ones built out for high res, for JPEGs, for quick proofs or whatever. But I'm going to go ahead and create a new one. And to do that, you just click on the little plus. I'm going to click on the little plus and I'm going to name this one, whatever it is, DSI print. Boom. And I'm going to uncheck 11 by 14. Now with the DSI print, the next thing that I look at, that it's the check mark is on and it's highlighted orange. That's the one that I'm working with right now. Now there's all of this other stuff down here in the process tab with output location, output naming, process summary, batch. All of that is great. It's information. The one that matters is process recipes. This tool right here that I have open. This is the magic sauce. This is the soup recipe that you're building out in order to get that file off to print. So first I'm going to start off with basic. I'm going to do TIFF, I'm going to go ahead and go 16-bit, right? Now for us at DSI, when you're sending us files for print, if you're using the value print, it's JPEG, and the instructions, Eric will cover that. That's also available online. It's a JPEG format. If you're doing a custom print, we ask that you send us a TIFF at 16-bit. Give us the most information possible. And correct me if I'm wrong on that. Right? Good on that?
Yep.
So I'm going to go TIFF and then Adobe RGB 1998. Now this is utilizing that Adobe Iccc Profile, resolution 300, and then scale. I've already processed it out as, I've already cropped it as a 16:20. But if I know for certain that that's, let's say I'm using the value, right? The value service or whatever, and I know that that's going to be what I want it to be, I'm going to go ahead and go into that scale here, and I'm going to go width and height. Right. And I know Michael had emailed asking a very specific question about getting that in and with borders and stuff like that. Well, here's where you really go in. First, you crop, step one, and then we're going to go ahead and go width height. And I'm going to label that out at 16:20. Boom. And then open with, and I'm going to have this open up into Photoshop. And this is the beauty right here, is if I go into another level of retouching, I can take it straight into Photoshop from this process recipe. Now, I know the question is going to be asked, but Capture One has a print dialog. Yes, it does. I love you, Capture One. Your print dialog is still less than desirable. The print dialog that it uses is whatever is native to your system. So if I click on the print dialog here, it's whatever is native to my system. Yes, I can make prints. I can send quick proofs to one of my printers or something like that. But I find the printing engine from Photoshop far more robust, and I have more control. And that's what this is all about me taking control over the files that, you know, I'm so proud of. I want to print and send them to my mom to hang on her wall, because she still does. Thanks, Mom. Right? So I'm going to go 16:20, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on File. Now, right now, root folder, it says output location. That could be anywhere. And one of the things that Capture One, I'm not going to call it a weakness, but one of the things that happens is sometimes if you've been using the software a lot, the output location will get confused. And it should, at its core, go to wherever this session is living. There's an output folder. For those of you who already know Capture One, like there's a capture folder and then an output folder, but I don't know. And specifically, maybe I don't want it living with this session. I want to put it in a very specific folder. So what I've done is I have created a print folder on my desktop. So I'm going to go ahead here, images to print DSI. I'm going to click on that. I've designated where I want that file to go so that I don't like hit process and then wonder where it is, right? So I'm being very specific about designating, hey, I want this image to live there. So I'm going to go ahead and go open. Now it says right there under root folder, I can give it a subname. I can give it a subfolder. All of these really powerful tools within Capture One. And I'm going to go ahead and create thumbnail on save, because I want that thumbnail to show up on my Finder window. Under adjustments, right here, it says respect crop or ignore crop. If I have ignore crop turned on, when it processes that file, it's going to do the whole picture as if I never cropped it. Right? Which is great for sometimes people put a crop on in a commercial world. You put a crop on so that the client's looking at it and you're there with your art director and they're seeing what they want to do with it, but they want the whole file so that their retouchers back in house can deal with it. In which case I would just turn on and ignore crop. But for us, we're talking fine art, we're talking making prints here. I'm going to go ahead and leave respect crop turned on. Really, really important. That way it's processing the file that I have designated within those parameters. Output sharpening. Now, some people like output sharpening. Some people like to do sharpening in post-processing and in Photoshop. There's lots of opinions on that. I generally leave sharpening off, and if there's sharpening that needs to be done, the person who's doing the printing is going to know best. If you're ever curious as to what that's going to do, I'm going to go ahead and turn output sharpening for print on, and then I'm going to go up to my proofing, which is my two little glasses up in the right-hand corner here. I'm going to turn on proofing, and now you see proofing showed up there. If I zoom in to 100%, because we always judge color and sharpness at 100%, and then I start to play with this output sharpening, you can see how it crunches that file.
Scott, from a lab standpoint, I just want to chime in here, and this is just kind of general for everyone in the audience. at the lab, one of the problems that we see the most on submitted images is over sharpening. So just wanted to throw that out there. So if you think your image isn't sharp enough for print, probably is.
Yeah. Yeah. I personally always leave sharpening off. Like I don't utilize that. I think if they're, you know, if I'm printing myself, I'll do the sharpening in Photoshop, but that is an option. It is a very good tool. It works very well. So I'm going to go ahead and just turn that back off. And now you can see with my proofing, I don't have that crunchy happening, right? So I'll go ahead and turn proofing off and then zoom back out. Now I'm going to go ahead and look at metadata, right? Do you want metadata attached to your file, your copyright, your camera info, any of that sort of stuff? And then watermark. If we're sending it to print, I don't think you want a watermark on it. There are two schools of thought on watermark, and some people, excuse me, as they're posting on social media, they'll add a watermark with their company logo or their name or something like that, you know, a little copyright information. But that's where you do that. So I don't need that turned on because we're sending this to print. When I go back to basic, double check myself, TIFF 16-bit, uncompressed, Adobe RGB 300 pixels per inch, right? I'm going full res, which is what we ask for when you send us the file. And then I'm going to go ahead and click process. Now, the beauty of this is it's going to process out that file, automatically open up Photoshop, and then bring us our image. And the main reason why I want to show you this, not to show you how to deal with it in Photoshop, but to show you that in order to ensure that true 16:20, Photoshop is opening on my other screen, just bear with me, that it is the correct size. Come on, Photoshop. I'm going to drag it over real quick. Option click. Now, down in the bottom, right here, can you guys see in the very bottom of my screen? The file is 16:20 at 300 pixels per inch, right? So now I can go in and do, you know, whatever is next with that file in Photoshop, right? By cropping it first and then building it out in the process recipe, I'm ensuring. Now, the question, yes.
Are we supposed to be seeing your Photoshop screen?
Are you not seeing it?
No.
I'm still seeing the Capture One screen.
Well, okay. How about now?
No, not yet.
Hold on.
Now.
How about
Yep.
now?
Now, I see it now.
And
So
now. All
just
right.
go back and show people about where the print size and the pixel dimensions, just so people.
So down here in the bottom, in the lower left-hand corner of Photoshop, you can see document size, profile, blah, 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 blah. If you go to document dimensions, it tells you right there in that bottom little corner. Let me shrink it down so I can get it up in the screen a little bit more.
Yeah.
Right down here in this bottom corner. And now I see that it's 16:20 at 300 pixels per inch. And that file is now ready to go. Now, if you're, let's say you're doing a value print and you want a 2-inch border on that, right? You want a 2-inch border or a 3-inch border, you know, straight out of the gates, and you're using the value print service, you'll need to think about that pre-hand before you process. So what I would do is actually process this file out smaller, right? So instead of 16:20, I would do 14:18, right? And I would crop it 16:20, but when I process it, I'd process it 14:18, which is going to be within dimensional sizes across the board. And then once I come into Photoshop, if I want that border built in, we can create our canvas, right?
So Scott, we did have a question that came through already about that. So can you build that border in Capture One?
No.
So you can't.
Not that I'm aware of. I've never found a way to do it. Maybe there's a smarter person out there than me. I always take it into Photoshop. Photoshop is the next step. What I'll do is I'll process the file a little bit smaller. And then I'm just going to call this one 18:22. And I put a border on it. I just find it easier to do that and visually in Photoshop, if that makes sense to everybody.
Yep, just Scott, I'll just chime in on two things. If you're using our custom print service, you can send us the file, and in the drop-down menus in our custom upload, you can specify borders, and we will add them to the image. In our value print service, we have options for, I believe, 1/4 inch and maybe a 1/2 inch border. And I want everybody to keep in mind that we will always add that border to the image size. So if you send us a 16:20 file and say, please add a 1/4 inch border, the final paper size will be 16.5 by 20.5 to preserve the image size that you're looking for. The advantage of that is that if you go out and buy a ready-made frame, or you have a frame at your house you want to use, the image will fit within what you expected to receive. So we do not in our value print service, if you send us that file, we do not reduce the image. We keep the image at the size you uploaded to us, and we add border to the outside of it. But if you want a specific border, a really wide border, which is what Scott's showing you, yes, what you should do is to bring that into Photoshop and canvas it out the way you want it, send it to us in the value print service, and just ask for quote unquote borderless. We will not crop the print to the image. We will crop the print to the size of the file you sent us. And I hope that makes sense.
And Scott, I just wanted to chime one more thing in here. When you go back to Capture One, which looks like you just did.
Yep, I'm there.
Lisa asked, I think Lisa missed where you went from Capture One to Photoshop. Can you show that command again?
So there's a couple of ways of doing it. I'm doing it in the process recipe. So over here on the left-hand side, underneath my process recipe, right? The soup sauce that matters. Everything else is fluff information. The key thing is that process recipe. At the bottom of the basic that says open with. And if I click on that, I can open it with Photoshop or Silver Effects if I want to go into Silver Effects, Nick, or any other software. That's where I designate that, so that when I hit process, it processes the file. It then takes it from a raw image into a TIFF or a JPEG or whatever your parameters are, and then automatically opens it up in that software. So that's where I'm doing.
You have to load those into that menu, or they will automatically show up?
Photoshop is already there.
Okay.
Photoshop, if you have it installed on your computer, it's kind of automatic. If you want to select another software, if you're working in with Affinity or something else, you can just go into other.
Right. So if you're working in Lightroom, pick that.
Right.
Okay.
So if I'm in, and then it just opens up your applications, and you can select the software that you want it to open up in.
Gotcha.
If that makes sense. The beauty of utilizing Capture One and creating those variants, and I want to touch back on those variants because we went through the process, is that you can continue to tweak a file out. I mean, here's one that I was playing with. Command F, we'll go full screen on that. Here's one that I was playing with, from Mono Lake in California, and the lower left is the original file. I edited it and tweaked it in Capture One, and that's the file that's above it. And I go, wow, that's really pretty. I like color. I like that environment, but let me see what it looks like in black and white. So then I went in, I enabled black and white, and started to tweak around with it and play with it. And then I opened it in Nick Color Effects, and which is how I got that kind of sepia tone, almost platinum looking image there in the lower right. And this is what's really exciting to me is for me, and I'm sure for you guys as photographers, when you've created a beautiful image, when you're looking through the viewfinder and you press that trigger and you just go, oh, I got it, right? Like that's the picture, that's going to be the one. Having the ability to something that you're really excited about, to then tweak it and play with it and take it into different dimensions in order to get the print that just is really beautiful and that you want to hang on your wall. Maybe you want to print the color and the black and white, right? And you swap them out every once in a while, or whatever your schematic is in your space. This is the exciting part about that, is that you can continue to tweak it and play with it. Mm-hmm. I can sit here and edit all day. I don't want to over talk. I want to allow time for questions. What questions do you guys have?
I'm unmute myself. We have a lot of questions, which is
cool.
Great. So let me see. I'm going to start with the first questions and work my way through the list. And I think you've answered this question, but Leah asked that it's not you said that it's not a substitute for Photoshop, but why would you need Photoshop if you can do all these things in Capture One?
Photoshop is next level tool. It's slightly more powerful. I have found, in teaching Capture One for the last 6 years, I love how we've advanced, how Capture One has advanced with the heel brush and the layers tools. You can only do up to 16. You can do up to 16 layers in Capture One. I do the bulk of my editing in Capture One because it's doing it on the raw file before it becomes something in fit parameters. However, for you medium format shooters out there, you know how it doesn't matter how careful you are, dust loves to live on your sensor. And sitting here with the heel brush in Capture One, a couple of dust spots is great. If I've got a filthy file, if I was, you know, some images from Death Valley when we were out there, you know, and being in the dust and everything else like that, like some of those files were just incredibly dirty. Going into Photoshop and using the J brush is just faster. It's just a faster edit to get rid of all of those little dust spots. Once I've tweaked the colors and gotten the file where I want it. Realistically, that for me is about it. And then of course going into print, because I think the print engine that Adobe has created is more robust.
So we have an anonymous question, and that says, does it make a difference what version of Capture One you're using?
And well, now that's a loaded question. It depends on the file that you're working with. So if you're coming from film, right? If you're taking your negatives and having those digitized, you know, in order to make prints, not really. For the camera system that you're using, yes, it does. For my Leica shooters, Capture 121 is going to be the one that's available to you because that relationship just started, you know, a week, 2 weeks ago, right? With being able to use Capture One fully integrated with all Leica cameras. I would say 10, Capture One version 10, like 7 was pretty good. Everything 4, 5, and 6 stunk. 7 was pretty good. 8 was better. 10 is really when it started to become something powerful. And as technology has increased and technology with our cameras, the versions of Capture One have gotten better and better. I would say between 20 and 21, no, it's still the same engine right now. The image in Capture 120 and the image in Capture 121 is still the same engine as far as I can see and tell. I'm not on the inside anymore, so I don't have all the inside or track information. But realistically, Capture 121 has a couple of new tools built in that are really great. The dehaze tool, and then of course, if you're a Leica shooter, you have to be on Capture 121. But I would say, you know, 12, and then it switched to 20. You think that there's 13, 14, 15, 16. No, it went version 12 and then 20. So version 11, 12, or 20 are all very solid editions of the software.
Okay, so Ron asked, and I'm going to answer part of this, and then I'll let you answer the second part. Ron asked, is it okay to take a file from my Leica M10, convert it to black and white in Capture One, and send you the file for printing? Absolutely, Ron. That would be great. In fact, you know, we want you to do the black and white conversion if you can, because then basically your computer actually becomes your darkroom and we become simply the tray that your print is printed in. So that's the best way. And he has another question, which is it okay to scan with my Nikon ES2-D800E to make large prints? If so, how large? 16 by 24, I think that's a question.
I mean, I can answer that if you want.
Yeah.
You know, I know that there are a number of people who are using digital SLRs with some of these various options out there for digitizing film archives. And while I've seen reasonable results, I can tell you that, you know, for the cost of what we're charging to do this, which starts at $30 and goes down from there, depending on how many negatives you send us, the resolution and control that we have is probably, you know, with the cultural heritage software, is by far going to give you the best results. With that said, if you are going to digitize your own files, you know, we've been able to do fairly large, you know, we can do 40 by 60s from our system easily. I don't know exactly with the 800E how big the file could go. If you, well, the easiest thing would be to upload us a file and ask us a question. Just send the file through our upload page and just say, you know, we don't charge to do that. We'd be happy to look at the file for you.
Yeah, and I would also say, Ron, since we're asking that question, I own a D800E, and 16 by 24, I don't think would be any problem.
Yeah, that's, I mean, from that camera in particular, for anybody who's, doing their own archiving and creating your own digital files, it all depends on the camera, the resolution, and then the bit depth, whether it's color or black and white. The bit depth is going to be the biggest thing in technology. Most SLR cameras on the market are 10 to 12 bits. The Sony sensors have hit that 14-bit color standpoint, but the medium format backs themselves, the phase 151 megapixel back is a 16-bit, and it's a true 16-bit. It's not a mathematical, it's a true 16-bit color file. So there's just a lot more information that can be achieved from that. The other thing with the, using a medium format in order to create a scanner and archive is that it's giving it shelf life. Because I'm doing research on this stuff, right? I get all the once you look at something on Amazon or on the internet, all of a sudden you get advertising for everything else because they're watching us. So I get all the advertising for these systems that are like, archive with your iPhone or whatever. Yeah, there's tons of tools out there, but you have to think in terms of shelf life of that file that you're creating. If I'm using technology that's maybe a couple of years old, it's not true 16-bit, it doesn't meet any kind of FADGI standards. Yeah, great. I can make a digital archive and I can make a print. Awesome. Do it. 5 years from now, how is that file going to compare to, just doing it right the first time, doing it at 151 megapixels, full 16-bit color. And so that's what I just tell people, like, you have to analyze, like, it's cost time. Your time is cost as well. And if I do it now and 5 years from now, I have to go and do it again, that's increasing my cost for digitizing that file. Whereas I could have just done it, right in the beginning.
Yep. So next question.
I just want to point out in terms of, we were talking color and files and black and white and taking the M10 and stuff like that. Capture One is designed to be Wysiwyg. I had to Google that the first time I heard it. I sadly say, what you see is what you get. And that everything that you're seeing on your screen is based upon that Iccc profile in your output process recipe. It's not based on input. Input is just giving you the data into the software, but everything in Capture One is based on your output profile, AKA if I'm going to a specific printer, or if I know I'm working in black and white and I go here and I go phase 1 gray 22, if you see, everything on my screen has now gone black and white. And so that's something to keep in mind if you're working with black and white, or you're working with color files or stuff like that. Sometimes people go in and they hit this and they get it on a weird profile or something like that, and the colors don't match up. And then when they send it to print, when you send it to print either on your printer or, to us at DSI, the colors come out a little off and people are like, what's going on? Really pay attention to that Iccc profile. We recommend Adobe 98. I personally use ProPhoto RGB a lot because it's a little bit bigger color space. But anytime I'm working with an art director, with a client, anytime I'm sending stuff into the lab, I'm going to make sure that it's Adobe 98 because that's the most commonly used color space.
So I have a question. I think I'm going to try and combine a couple of questions that were asked in the Q&A. And so basically, for someone who's doing their own printing at home and they've created a paper profile, an Iccc profile of their own, or whether they've created or downloaded it from somebody, they should be working in that space as they're doing the corrections in.
Yes.
And so then another question is, and for people that print with digital silver imaging, we hope that you all would give us a shot. We recommend Adobe 1998. We don't recommend doing a specific profile geared towards a specific paper, because we gear everything towards Adobe 1998. Do you have anything you want to add to that, Eric?
No, that's, we don't do soft proofing, and we don't have Iccc profiles that for you to do soft proofing online. One of the reasons is I am not a big believer in that because it really, the most important thing you can do to get a quality print that you're happy with from us is to invest in an inexpensive monitor calibrator, whether it's X-Rite, which is what we use here at the lab, or a Spider. If you're not profiling your monitor on a regular basis, you will have more frustration than anything. So do that.
Just guessing. You're just guessing.
Yeah, you're just guessing. And always keep in mind, when you're looking at a monitor, right, these monitors are all transmissive light. It's like looking at a transparency, an old 35 millimeter transparency that you hold up to the light. It's going to be, you know, that and your print will never exactly match, because one is transmissive light and the other, when you look at a print, is reflected light. So the calibrated monitor is truly the most important thing you can do.
So
I
I think we have a lot of questions, so we need to kind of plow through these babies. So
I was going to
another
bring somebody from that I knew from Boston, Tiff Pemberton. Nice to see you. And so Tiff, you had a question regarding clarity and structure within Capture One, which was interesting to me because I always thought clarity was a Lightroom tool, and that structure was something that Nick Software kind of used to talk about the same thing. So Scott, I'm going to ask you to address that question for Tiff.
So clarity and structure are essentially mid-tone contrast. So if I go to my clarity tool right here, and I'm going to drag it up a little bit higher. That's the nice thing about, you know, Capture One is I can rearrange my tools. If you look at your clarity and you go natural, punch, neutral, and classic, right? There are some different versions in there. And clarity, and I'm going to zoom to 100% on these rocks here. Clarity looks at the mid-tone contrast on a scene, right? And structure looks at the pixels that make up the edges of those, right? So it's looking at the edge of the pixels. So clarity is, you know, overall mid-tone contrast, and structure is pixel edges. It's a tool that I use often when I was, you know, photographing cars commercially. I like a little crunch in my files. That's me. That's you know, something that I like visually. So let me go to where's a Canon file here? Here we go. Boom. Here's a Canon file from a, what is it, 5D Mark II maybe. And if I go into clarity and I start to give it a little crunch and a little structure, I like what it does on the car itself. And the nice thing is let me find it here. Here's what my before and after, right? So where I was and where I am, I can see that by playing with that tool a little bit, it's just going to crisp up that file a little bit, which I really like.
So can you, because I think that's interesting. So structure is more of an edge tone, an edge sharpening, and clarity is more of, what did you say about that?
Contrast.
Contrast.
Tone contrast.
Okay. Tiff, I hope that answers your question, because it certainly helped me understand something new.
That's, I mean, and you know, with anything that you do in Capture One, it used to be within the individual tools. If you want to see, you know, what something is doing to a file, if you hold the Option key on your keyboard and you do the reset button within that tool, you can do like a quick before and after as you're holding down that tool, which, you know, as I'm editing, a lot of times it's like, well, do I love it? Do I like what it's doing? They added in Capture 120 up here in the top, this before and after. And so if I turn that tool on, you can see that it comes up with where this file began and what I've done to it in post. So the image that was created, and this is the tool set from that Aston Martin DB5, or no, it's a DB6 because it has a funny butt for my Aston Martin people, which is really great. And I mean, that's something that I do often. It's been asked for forever. Is there a history, you know, a history tool or an on-off tool or whatever in Capture One? And there's not. And then they added this in, which is really great. Or being able to, you know, do a before and after, holding the Option key on the individual tool itself to see the different elements, if that's helpful.
I think that answers the question. So Francois asked, is there a difference between a print at 300 PPI and 360 PPI for print quality? Eric, do you want to answer that?
For our silver gelatin prints, the Lightjet, which is a continuous tone printer and not a pigment, you know, printer, which is a dots, you know, using droplets of ink. So the continuous tone black and white process only uses 300 dpi on the photographic laser. So for that process, I would say leave it at, you have to leave it at 300. You don't have to. I mean, it'll print at 300. And as far as inkjet printing, 300 dpi is the preferred for us. I have not seen, even on very large prints, a significant difference between 300 and 360.
And then I have a general scanning question here that I'm just going to throw out there, which is, and I think I'm just going to answer this. So someone asked, Peter asked about scanning negatives on their Epson scanner. And I always tell people, you should always scan at your maximum resolution. And that way you have a file at maximum resolution, and you're not going to be continually going back to rescan at a higher resolution. And then if you need smaller files, then you can always create them from that max res file. And that's the way we do it in the lab with our image capture process. So you get one very large file, and then you can make clones or smaller variants off of that file.
Just to
Fred
pick up
asked,
on that, Andrea, just to confirm with people, when Andrea says maximum resolution, which is true, that has to be the maximum optical resolution of the scanner, not the interpolated resolution. Because if you start going into interpolated resolution, then that's not ideal. So if you need to, just look up the maximum optical resolution of your scanner and scan at that.
I had a good question from Fred, and I don't know if any of us can answer this. Will it work with if you're using CS6 in conjunction with CS6? I don't know that.
Yes.
It will work with CS6. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going from Capture One into whatever software after it processes the file. So we've taken this file from its raw format, whether it's CR2, ARW, NEF, right? RAF. I have a Fuji file in here as well. When it takes it from that file and then processes it out into a JPEG or a TIFF, there's DNG, PSD. Other things like that. You just tell it what software you want to open it in. So if you're in an older version of Photoshop, or using another tool like Affinity or something like that, you can.
Yeah. So, and I'm going to answer this other question really quickly. So JT asks, how do you calibrate, predictor, adjust what looks great on a backlit monitor screen to ink on paper? And again, JT, I'm going to go back to the fact that you need to calibrate your monitor and get a monitor calibration tool like one made from X-Rite or Daylight's, the Spider product. It's worth every dime you spent. You've got this expensive camera, you've got expensive computer equipment. To spend 100 or 200 bucks on that tool is worth every penny. Mary asks, what's the general flow for moving between Lightroom and Capture One?
So Lightroom and Capture One, Lightroom at its core is a cataloging software, right? At its very roots, Lightroom was designed as, there was Photoshop and there's Bridge, and it was that in-between space. And Adobe did a very, very good job of that. I've used Lightroom since version 1. I was an early adapter of Lightroom and know it well. Going back and forth between Lightroom and Capture One, I don't understand why you would need to. If you're using Lightroom as your catalog, okay, then that's your archive that you've built. If you do any edits in Capture One and then you take and bring those files into Lightroom, or vice versa, those edits aren't cross-platform. It's the different engines or the different tools within the software. So if I edit an image in Capture One and then I bring it into Lightroom, none of my edits are going to reflect if it's still the raw file. Now, if I edit it in Capture One and then I process a JPEG or a TIFF and bring that into Lightroom, then of course it's going to have that, because those edits that I've done to that file are baked into it, if you will.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. So Richard asked, I think he asked this question earlier, and I thought we answered it, but I think I misunderstood Richard. And I think he's talking about the actual image capture. Should you be capturing the image in Adobe 1998? I think that was his question.
If you're coming out of a camera, the camera's going to have its own profile, right? And so whatever profile the camera has is what gets brought into Capture One. If we go into my, let me find it under my base characteristics right here. So when you Capture One, if you look at your Iccc profile, your base characteristics, whatever camera that you've shot that file with is going to show up there. So whether it's Fuji or Nikon, Sony, Leica, this is where it's going to show up. And so those base characteristics are just the initial data of the file that's coming from the camera itself. And then when you're editing, working in Adobe 98, which is the most widely used, across the board, in the industry, it will reflect that color profile, that Iccc. Does that make sense? Did I answer that?
I think so. Sounds good to me. Let's go. Richard, you can chime in if you thought we answered that or not. Nicholas asks, and I don't know if I understand this question, so I'm just going to throw it out there. When processing variant from Capture One to Nick, does variant automatically show up in Capture One session folder? It seems to be all lined up sequentially in your computer.
Yep. So this is a variant. So in order to take it into Nick, in order to do a variant in Nick, what I did is I went to my raw file here, and these are all, you can see the 1, 2, 3. And then when I get to this one, it doesn't have a 4 because it's not a variant. It's actually processed out. If you look at the bottom of the file, it's become a TIFF. So when I am going into Nick or another software, I can round trip with Photoshop as well. I'm going to go to that thumbnail and I'm going to control click or right click on it, and it's going to open up that menu, and I'm going to go edit with, right? And then I designate what I want to edit with. So with Photoshop, I can go straight into Photoshop. I can go into Silver FX Pro. And my window is being blocked here. I can't see what it's doing because I have our picture. Let me move our pictures over there. Now you can see that it opened up this edit recipe, and I can designate what I want. So just for the sake of speed, I'm going to go JPEG and then 72 DPI because I just want it to be fast. Scale fixed. I don't want it to scale. And I'm going to edit a variant. And what it's going to do is process the file using the Capture One processing engine and then open it up in Nick.
Okay, so I think I'm going to make an executive decision. I think we've gone over an hour here.
Yeah.
So,
but we're having so much fun.
Yeah. So I'm going to make a suggestion. We're going to run the raffle, and then I think we'll leave it open for maybe another 10 minutes if people want to ask some more questions. How do you feel about that, Scott?
I'm here. I'm all in.
Okay.
Sounds good.
I love being here with you guys. Come on.
So just to clarify that we're not just going to pick a name out of thin air. What I'm going to do is I'm going to my computer and I'm going to a random number generator. And so now I see we still have, and I'm taking the number of participants that are still on the webinar, and I'm entering that into my random number generator. Okay. Now I'm going to generate a random number, which is 73. Now I'm going to go to the attendee list, and I'm going to count down from what
So while you're doing that, Andrea, I'm going to answer a question. Okay.
Yeah.
So to Rob Rogovich, you're asking about where to set the highlights and shadows for print. Really the rule of thumb, at least for a long time, was always, anything kind of above 252 on your highlights is going to get blown out. And I would say that rule still holds. One of the things that we liked about switching to Canon printers away from Epson is that Canon now adds a thing called Gloss Optimizer for all of our semi-gloss fine art prints. So in areas that used to be like where no ink would be laid down up in that area, the Gloss Optimizer actually does lay down a little bit of that Gloss Optimizer ink so that doesn't lead to what was called blooming, where there was just completely blown out. As far as shadow goes, I still firmly believe and can prove that silver gelatin process does still show detail in literally on the shadow range in the 3, 4, and 5, and inkjet tends to stop at about 7, 8, or 9. So you will get a little more shadow detail and openness in your shadows with the silver print if you're doing black and white. And, you know, color, you know, is again kind of, I mean, it's still really unbelievable today to me what you can get. So hopefully, Rob, that answers your question. It's not published, not a bad idea. I'll talk to my marketing guy about doing that, Andrea.
I think he just gave you more work.
I think so. And we have a winner. It is Kate Jordahl. I hope I pronounced
Kate.
it right. You had a
Hey,
winner.
Kate.
I would say come on down, but unfortunately we're not able to do that. But we will.
Let me see if I can unmute Kate for a second here. There's Kate.
Where are you, Kate?
Hello, I'm in Bellingham, Washington, and I'm super excited that I definitely will use the silver. We've done silver prints before from digital files, and I'm super excited about the possibility. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Congrats, Kate. It's great to see you.
Yeah.
Good to see you too, Scott.
So, hey, you know each other? I'm sorry, Kate, you're disqualified.
Not that well, not that well.
Not that well. Okay. All right, no problem then.
I think
So,
Scott visited us when we were in Hayward a while back.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
Kate, if you send your contact info to our email, which is info@digitalsilverimaging.com, we'll get you all set.
Definitely.
Yeah. And, you know, as we said, we still have, you know, we realize some people are dropping off, but for those that you want to stick around for a few more minutes, we will continue to answer questions. Scott, I'm going to take away, or I'm going to do a share my screen. Well, actually, I guess what I can do first is, yeah, can you turn off your screen share for a second, Scott?
Yep. I'm going to go ahead and turn off stop screen share. Boom.
So, you know, I did want to show, you know, just for those of you that we were talking about as a silver print. This is the print that we produced from that file, which is, again, you know, really kind of the beauty of where we are today, which is to be able to go from my 6x7 negative digitized on our unbelievable, fabulous DT Atom system, our image archive service. And for those of you who wonder, maybe you can hear that, that's real silver. This is not a pigment print. So beautiful continuous tone process, great sharpness, and you know, great image quality. So if you send us a file and want a real silver gelatin print, that is part of one of our primary services. And the only other thing I was going to show here quickly is, if I can share my screen for a second, was simply about the upload process. Was if people haven't worked with us, oops, sorry. Andrea, can you see the DSI screen?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so in our menu over here, from the drop-down menu, if you have questions about our silver gelatin prints, you can click on this area. Inkjet and or as other people call them, G-clay prints, we'll click there, and that will certainly talk to you about papers. For ordering prints, like we talked before, if you want to do a custom print where we will actually do proofing and can, you know, really kind of customize that print, you can simply go through here, select whether it's a fine art inkjet print, and you can select, again, the variety of papers, or a silver gelatin print, and again, select a true fiber base or a traditional resin coated paper. So that's for custom printing. For our value printing service, we, you know, that basically is a kind of, you send us a file, we use the same people to do the printing, same equipment, same papers, but our service allows you to sort of have pre-described sizes. You actually get to see aspect ratios, but there isn't a lot of there's no customization involved whatsoever. But we also have our print sample promotion available through here, where if you want to see your image printed on 3 different inkjet papers, you can try that. If you want to send us a file and have it printed, one on the RC and one on the fiber, we offer that through here. So when you launch that, you will come to our value print page, these two, the top one, gives you printing, mounting, and framing options for black and white. This one does for our inkjet prints. And then our prints only is a great tool. People have been very happy with this. And you can simply upload and send us your files through there. So I'm going to stop screen share, and I want to see how we're doing. We've got about 90 people left, and if
we have new questions.
Yeah, so let's go ahead. Let's answer some of those questions.
Okay, so my last question was from Christoph. So let's see. Okay, I think that. So again, I think people are still a little unclear on why you'd use something other than Capture One to print a file.
You mean using the print dialog from within Capture One?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me open up my Capture One. I'm going to bring that back up. The reason being is that the print dialog in Capture One is simply whatever's native to your computer. So it's whatever kind of a print dialog that's in there. Yes, you have some control and you can print. I find it personally a little slow. When it's doing its work and it's processing. And like I said, for me, when I go to print on my own printers here, or to finalize anything up, if I'm going with a specific size, if I pre-build that border and I'm uploading in order to have that border built in on it, I just do it through Photoshop. I just think it's a more robust engine, and it gives me more control over that file.
I'm going to answer a couple of questions here sort of related to paper that I've seen. So Michael Miller asked if we offer William Turner as a paper option. I love Hahnemühle. They're one of my, I work with them. We work very closely with Canson. Very happy with both of those companies. The answer is no. I don't. Unfortunately, Michael, William Turner is one of my least favorite papers, only because of how fragile the surface is. I do think, I know it has a wonderful tooth to it. We offer their museum etching paper, which is a really nice premium weight paper. It has a little less tooth than William Turner, but it is a less fragile surface. So for that reason, we've had situations where we've sent out William Turner prints and then people call and say, well, there's an ink spot missing, and so for that reason, I've moved away from William Turner. Primarily because we're printing and shipping, and obviously things can happen like that. So, and then the other question was related to papers from Mary. Are we going to offer any sessions about paper choices? And yes, actually, we've been talking about a webinar about doing that. So stay tuned for something maybe from us in late January, where we will have a webinar to talk about papers and paper surfaces and choices.
Eric, are you looking at the Q&A?
Yeah.
Do you see Rayad's question?
Which one?
Rayad.
No, I'm sorry. What was the question?
So he said, I've noticed your RC True black and white prints don't like blown highlights.
No. I think
could we reduce, wait, there's more. Should we reduce our output highlights until no blown highlights? I don't know if I really understand that.
Yeah, I mean, if I understand what they're saying is that, if you're seeing blown highlights on your monitor, we're clearly going to see them here. And I go back to Scott's and our, recommendation is always look at things at 100% before you send it to us, so you can be absolutely sure that your highlights aren't blown out. And yes, the RC paper does not have the same silver content of a true silver gelatin fiber-based paper. They are both true silver prints. However, because of the resin base of the RC paper, there is less silver content than a fiber-based paper, and a fiber-based, because of the higher silver content, can resolve more highlight and shadow detail than an RC print. It's just one of the reasons it's a premium price. It's more silver. I hope that answers the question.
Yep.
On the highlights.
Yeah. Go ahead.
The highlights, if you hit Command E on your keyboard.
Command what?
Command E.
Yep.
right? Is the shortcut key. I like shortcut keys because they're fast, but you can see I turned that on, and here's my shadow warning and my highlight warning. And I, you know, coming from a commercial background and working in catalog, I would always set my highlights and my shadows to 10:249 to ensure that I was within spray capabilities when it would, you know, go to print, you know, for Land's End or Neiman Marcus or Target, or, you know, working on the commercial side of things. You can see with this file in particular, let's just go image, new variant. Let's take it back to 0, right? And where it was in the beginning. And I have those shadows going on through my editing and my tweaking. You know, if I start to play with that file and I have that turned on, I can see where I am. And digital, you know, digital is just like Chrome. If you treat digital the same way that you would treat Chrome film when you were exposing it, you're going to get better results. Yes, we have a tremendous amount of latitude with digital files that we didn't have with film. You know, Chrome, we had, you know, half a stop to a stop either side. Film gave us 4 stops, you know, and digital gives us 15, now 18 stops, right? We have this tremendous latitude. But, you know, if that's something that you're curious about, just go ahead and turn that feature on as you're editing, and you'll see right there what is happening with that file as you're tweaking it around, if that's a useful tool.
Yep, thanks, Scott. So Command E.
And I think that
Command E.
And that's relative to your color space, Scott?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, right now I'm in Adobe 1998.
Right.
To set that, you know, it's just in the preferences here, and you go to your exposure warnings.
Right. So Rob asked, give a reasonable guess as to what to set your highlight shadow warning in Capture One. So I think, Rob, that answers your question. So you should first decide what what color space you're going to be using. You know, so if you're printing with us, we recommend Adobe 1998. Or if you're using your own, if you're printing it yourself, then set it to whatever Iccc profile you're using, or Adobe 1998. So let's see. Moving backwards because I want to catch people that are still here.
Somebody was asking about the C1 version for Canon. What distinguishes the Nikon version from all camera version? The Nikon version, it's just relationships that Capture One built with various companies. So if you're using a Nikon, a Sony, a Fuji, or a Leica specific version, it will only work with that camera system. The Pro version works with all the camera systems. You know, I know some people, you know, they only shoot Sony, and so the Capture One for Sony is fine. For me, I shoot 4 or 5 different, you know, cameras. I have, you know, I you know, shot the phase files. I have my Canons, I have my Fuji. So using the Pro version will just give you that flexibility. It is a little bit more expensive, but that way it doesn't matter what camera format you're coming from. It'll work with all those different versions. I just happened to see that question, so I wanted to answer it. And shout out to my man, Blake Griffith with Capture One. Good job.
Okay, so let me just answer a question in the chat here. Let's see. Does printing from Affinity Photo or Photoshop affect ultimate quality?
I don't know. I've never printed from Affinity. I haven't tested it personally.
I would say no, unless you're doing something, you know, a lot of times people utilize software to do something that's not designed for the ultimate output. And I have an example of this, which is really horrendous, but that's my opinion. It's where people take a photo, make it black and white, and then turn one object in the photo a color, you know, where the rest of the photo is black and white.
That's art.
So when making art, sometimes there is a problem, but typically, you know, most output softwares, you know, like Photoshop or what's the McFun product? I'm blanking on the name. Or Nick, whatever it is, you know, as long as it's a professional quality piece of software, not like, you know, Corel Draw or something like that, it produces a good file for print. Now let's see. I think I'm looking at a lot of the questions, and I think we've covered most of them.
Here's somebody, Alfred, that So Alfred, you've got in here that you didn't get my question answered, but you learned a lot. Could you, if you're still with us, Alfred, would you mind just typing your question in, because it may be something other people want to hear as well. And I'm sorry if we missed that. There have been so many, and I'm having trouble finding it in the Q&A, or was it in the chat? But Alfred, are you still here? Just type it in.
Yeah, so I think.
Jerry, I'm just going to answer Jerry's. Capture one, can I invert an image negative to positive with Control Command I? No, because I just tried it. I'm trying it now, and no, it does not work.
Okay, I don't see. All right, so well, I think unless we've missed anything. As I said, I was trying to find that gentleman, but he did not resend it. So I think we've got a winner again. So congratulations to Kate. Really glad so many of you stuck around with us this afternoon. This has been informative. I personally am very excited to have Scott on board. He's a wealth of knowledge and adds a great, he's just a great asset to the team. And, with his background in history, and we're very excited to get this digitization system up and running, both here at the lab and then soon in a town near you. So
we'll have more coming on that. Yeah. As we get up and running. We're going to create videos and more social media, and yep. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen here. Right. Send the plane away. We're going to have more on that. Super stoked. Look, they gave me a t-shirt, guys. I'm official. Right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And more webinars to come.
Yeah. So yes. Stay tuned for our next so the next one that's on the books will be very shortly is with Leica, and Scott will be leading that, and that'll be on Thursday, January 7th, I think at 4 p.m. But stay tuned. We'll send out emails, and I know Leica will as well. And if you have any questions for us about printing or about our digitization process, please contact us at our main email. Andrea, have you put that into the chat? If you would, just info@digitalsilverimaging.com. And, one of the things that, two of the things I realized as we started this digitization thing, since I'll just tell you, is that, one was the idea that people get very nervous about putting film in the mail. So we have actually come up with a system. We have a hard case, a vault case that we can send to you, where you can put your film safely inside of a vault case, and we'll provide return shipping. So that was one solution for smaller collections or things like that. And obviously the next concept was our mobile digitization system, which is a mouthful. But anyway, thanks again to everybody for being with us. In our virtual world, as I said before, looking forward to being less virtual and more realistic. So we hope everybody has a safe holiday, be healthy, be smart, and keep your gatherings to a minimum, I guess. And just looking forward to a healthy and safe and prosperous new year for everyone. And we look forward to working with you on any printing projects you may have. So again, thanks, Andrea, for helping everything that you did to put this webinar together and answering everybody's questions and keeping that on task. I know that's a lot. We had what?
Thanks, Scott.
Oh yeah, no, I'm getting there. It's so funny because I still see Kate on the screen, but thanks, and thanks to Scott. As I said, I'm really excited about having Scott on our team. Did a great job again on our webinar today. You'll all get a link to the webinar he did before, talking about and walking you through our digitization system. So, so whatever you celebrate, whether it's Christmas or Hanukkah or nothing at all, I wish you a happy Festivus from the rest of us. So take care, everyone, and wish you all the best. And thanks for being
with us. This is being recorded, so it's going to be on our YouTube channel, and you'll probably get the link in the follow-up email.
Yep. Bye, everybody. Take care. Happy and healthy and safe New Year.
Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah.
Bye.